Good morning, everyone. We have finished, with God's help, we finished the mimer, the Hasidic essay, which talked about the fish and the ox. Remember the two different types of tzaddikim, which in some way will be accessible to all of us in the days of the Mashiach, but now we can sort of simulate that. But at least we know what our goal is. The fish tzaddikim are ones that are flying around in reality in the upper worlds, and they can fix things up very easily. And every generation, there's maybe one or two like that. And then there's the tzaddikim that are like the ox, that they deal more in the commandments, and they're connected to God all the time. Both of them have this essential ingredient, which is called mesirut nefesh, self-sacrifice, not thinking about yourself, only thinking about what the Creator wants at first, and then you think about yourself. Then you think, how can I do it? And that's these two types of tzaddikim. And remember, we talked about that in great length yesterday. Okay, now let's begin the new mimer. And this is in last week's Torah portion, but it's relevant to us. And it's talking about the splitting of the sea and what's going to be in the future. It says that in the future, there's a prophecy from Isaiah. And it says Mashiach is going to come and he's going to split not the sea, not the Yam, like when the Jews went over Yam Suf. When they got out of Egypt, it says that the sea split into 12 different tunnels. I don't want to disappoint those people who saw the movie, but obviously the people who saw the movie did not see this midrash. So it says that there was one tunnel for each one of the 12 tribes. Each one of the 12 tribes. and those were not like the Havdil, the tunnels that the Hamas dealt and they dug, which was for destruction. These were 12 tunnels of realization of God. Each one for each one of the different tribes, that one of the 12 tribes that left Egypt, because that's the purpose of the Jews, is to reveal God in the world. Okay, so when the Jews left Egypt, so they went across the sea, and the sea split into 12 divisions, and the Jews went over the sea. I mean, the fact of the matter is they didn't really go over the sea. They just went through the sea, and they came out, I don't know, a mile or two down on the same side that they went in. But that's not the point over here. We talked about that before. And okay, so there was 12. When the Jews left Egypt, they went across the sea, and in the future, the Mashiach will take the Jews across the river. That's what Isaiah says. And in Egypt, the Jews went across the sea. They got 12 paths, and in the future, it's going to be 7. So it seems that going out of Egypt was better. I mean, it was better. They went across the sea. The sea is bigger than a river, huh? And then the Mashiach is only going to split the river. And in Egypt, when they went out of Egypt, they got 12. Each tribe got one, and in the future it's going to be 7. So we're going to be 5 less. The future. So what does that mean? What's that mean? So we'll see. In fact, going out of Egypt is incomparably more real and miraculous than. I'm sorry. In fact, the Mashiach, the revelation of Mashiach, is going to be infinitely more real and miraculous than going out of Egypt. So why is it that they only went across the river, and why only 7? What's wrong? So we'll see. Let's go. Ready? Now we have to remember that everything that it says in the Torah is, number one, inside of us. And also what's inside of us is infinitely more than what we can possibly imagine. Now, Mashiach will reveal who we really are, what potential humans are, and how good this physical world really is. That's all. The Mashiach will come. No one will think about going to heaven. This is a big obsession, and whatever it is nowadays that people have. All the religions going to heaven. You got to go to heaven. This is going to get to heaven and heaven and heaven. And Mashiach is going to come and say, "Stop it! Stop it already! Stop thinking about heaven all the time. It's so selfish, so intensely selfish. Think about the Creator, only about God. And what is God thinking about? This physical world. That's what He's thinking about. There is heaven, but don't think about it. Heaven is like a reward. It's like a doctor thinking only about how much money he's making, instead of thinking about the main thing, which is infinitely more valuable, and that is healing people, right? All the money in the world can't compare to human life. So that's what the same thing is. All of the heavens in the world can't compare to being in this world and doing what God wants. But we're going to see. Mashiach is going to reveal it. Here we go. So it says about Mashiach, "V'henif yado al nahar." He will lift up his, or God will lift up his hand on the river, bo'im rucho, with all of his power, v'hiko, and he will smite it, l'shiva nachalim, to 7 tributaries. Hine, behold, let me make this bigger over here. Hine, behold, Yam Suf, when the Jews went across the Yam Suf, which is translated as the Red Sea, which is pretty, I mean, it's pretty, I think, a mistranslation. But it says that the Yam Suf, a Suf means like reeds. So the Reed Sea, but we'll call it the Red Sea. When the Jews went across the Yam Suf, Haya Bechinas Malchus, which that's the Yam Suf represents a spiritual level. That's what's called Malchut of Atzilut. Malchut of Atzilut, there's what's called 10 Sfirot. There's 4 worlds. 4 worlds are 4 dimensions of reality. Atzilut is the highest dimension of reality. It's pure godliness. And the lowest aspect in this pure godliness is called Malchut. It's called God's kingship. That is represented by the sea. Why? Especially the sea, because the sea conceals everything that's inside of it. All the fishies and the octopuses and things like that. And the same thing, Malchut of Atzilut conceals, it's the lowest aspect of Atzilut, and it conceals everything inside of it. Malchut is sometimes called God's speech. Right? God created the world, and when he created the world, you can't see that it's God doing it. So it's concealment. That's Malchut of Atzilut. Shu b'china the dibur. This is the upper speech of God. Dibur, that speech. Who's sofa that called Dargan. It is the end of all levels. Why is the end of all levels? Because that's what finally comes out. Shabbat Davar Hashem, that in the word of God the heavens were made. The call Asara Mamoros, and all of the 10 utterances that God said when he created the world. Let there be light, let there be a firmament, etc. Let there be fish and birds. And they are Hamshachos, these are all the revelations from these 10 aspects of godliness, which are in Atzilut, which we said Atzilut is the highest dimension of reality, and that is what we call pure godliness. And pure godliness is also what's God in his purity. There's higher levels, but God in his purity is the potential to has the potential to create also, and we're made in God's image. What does that mean? So we talked about this before. That's the secret of the 10 Sfirot. The 10 Sfirot are another way of saying God's personality or his character. That's what makes God of the Jews different from every other religion. Ein Kelokenu. There's nothing like our God. The God of the Jews creates everything, even the highest spiritual levels you can possibly imagine. They are just creations. God is creating them. That is infinitely, infinitely higher than any spiritual level there can be. So what makes them unique, the Jews? Because this God is infinitely, infinitely interested in every detail of this world. And he is involved. And he answers our prayers. God personally. That's the God of Israel. So that's the 10, what's called the 10 Sfirot, God's personality. On one hand, God's personality is above everything, but on the other hand, God's personality mostly shows how God is interested in the world. He comes down. He has love and awe and all this. Okay. Anyway, these are the 10 Sfirot of Atzilut. And the lowest aspect of this world of Atzilut is what's called God's speech, which on one hand reveals godliness, but it conceals godliness. Just like a person when he lies, right? A person lies, he says, who are you? My name is George Washington. George Washington, I mean, that he died like over 200 years ago. Yes, I know, I've been in hiding. I've been in hiding, and I went into I was frozen below absolute zero, and I came back. The whole thing is a big lie, right? A big lie. But you might think that's who the person is. That's what speech can do. And in a way, this world is a big lie. In a way, it's why? Because it's screaming out and proving that God is either doesn't exist or that he's separate from the world. He's separate from the world, and that's a big lie. So that's God's speech. So on one hand, it's revealing God because God is creating the world. But on the other hand, the world is presenting itself in a big lie. When we go through that lie, we realize that there's a big purpose why God is lying, why he's creating this world. It's called Alma de Shikra. Nevertheless, this aspect of God that creates the world, that's called God's kingship. That's like the sea that split. And when it split, so we could see behind the lie of this world that it's really not separate. That's what happened when God split the sea when they went over, when they left Egypt. So these are the drawing down of the 10 Sefirot. That's his Malchut, the sea of godliness. That's God's speech, which is in the letters of God's speech. Let there be light, etc. And this is drawn down from the upper, highest level of Atzilut, of God's personality, and that's what's called Chachma. Chachma, there's 10 Sefirot. Chachma is the highest, and Malchut is the lowest. The Dibur, and this God's speech conceals and hides over this light. So what's God talking about? He's talking. What is the Rebbe talking about? He's talking about the world. You're sitting in front of a screen. You see a screen. You see yourself maybe in the screen. The screen goes. Look in a mirror or something. You see yourself. Look out the window. You see the world. All of this is a product of God's Malchut, God's speech, and the whole thing is a big misleading lie. It's a lie. Not the whole thing. There is 0.0001 truth inside of it. And that, when we reveal that truth, that's called splitting the sea. And we see the truth. Just like a person, when a person speaks, this is a vessel for his intellect and for his emotions. They are drawn down, and they're enclosed in it, in his speech. Nevertheless, the letters of speech, they conceal over what the person has in his mind, which is inside of them, and they covered over betocham sha'ari akatan, a small child, maybe, and even though he understands all of the letters. 1 second, we have the letters. Okay, even though he understands all the letters. 1 minute. Even though he understands all the letters, tables and the words of Omer, and he can speak them. Nevertheless, Enu Mevin Klal Haskala Shebatoch Otiot, that doesn't understand what's inside of them. Rak Mishu Asmo himself is very wise. Mikodim, before Azai Mevin Mitocha Osios, inside of the letters. So you tell the child, okay, say, I pledge allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, right? I remember we used to say in school, my country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty. We'd sing a song of thee. I sing. So nobody understood what they were singing. So we said, my country is a bee, sweet land of liberty. We just thought it was words, maybe in some weird language. But we said all the words. The same thing if you pronounce the words properly, doesn't necessarily mean anything. The words are the words, and they can express very deep ideas. Right? Like if somebody, let's say the president of the United States goes to France and he's just given a page, say these words, right? And he doesn't even know what he's saying, but he says the words, and everybody claps and they kiss him and they want to, he doesn't even know what he's saying, but he said the words. Words can conceal, they convey intellect, but they conceal intellect. You're saying the words, there's intellect inside of the words, and you don't know what it is, right? You don't know what it is. But on the other hand, a person that does know what it is, so the words convey something. The same thing with the world. The world really is conveying a message, but we don't understand what the message is. It's concealed. So that's the lie part of the world. It seems that there is no message. It seems that all there is just the world. Therefore, you can understand anything you want to. But the fact of the matter is that that's the idea of Kabbalah. And the secrets of the Torah is explaining what's the meaning behind these words of God, which the words of God are the creative forces of the world. That's what. Okay. So it says words can be very deceptive and very concealing. Lochen, therefore, Maila, La Maila above, Ke Shehit Hava Chachma, Shehit Havot HaChachma, the Bria Yetzir Nasiya, therefore the creation of the highest level of the worlds below Atzilut, which are Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiya. So Atzilut is the highest of the worlds. The lowest aspect of Atzilut is Malchut, God's speech, and from that comes the worlds which are below it, Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiya. The highest aspect of Bria, which is called Chachma, this is just Mina Dibur, it's just from God's speech. Below Kamo Mashal, and not like in the example, Shalomed hu chacham mikodim, that a person who learns something, a child is very precocious, he learns, so he can understand. But the worlds of Bria, Yetzirah, and Asiya, they didn't learn before. They don't know what the words are. That's why it says all the angels are going crazy for God, because they get a little glimpse of God, and they go crazy because their whole being comes from God's speech, and God's speech covers over God. Even the angels. Ari in Kenev, so the Dibur, the God's speech, va'otot, and the letters of Malchut, of Atzilut, which we said is the lowest aspect of the highest of these four dimensions, they conceal and they hide over the Chachma, Vina, and Dat, and the intel and the emotions of Atzilut. This we said, God's personality is being concealed over by Malchut of Atzilut, which is God's speech. Hamidlabshit, which is put into God's speech, that shouldn't be revealed at all, even in the highest of the spiritual worlds. But just a aura, just a small ray of light, me'od, or just like light which is drawn down by means, like light which is drawn down by means of hairs. According to Kabbalah, the hairs on your head are really intellect. And it's very, very, so that's why they're on your head. So it's very, very constricted and concealed intellect to the point where you don't feel anything and it doesn't look at all like any intelligence. And even animals, an ape, whatever, has, a horse has nicer hairs than a human being, a beautiful mane. So, but nevertheless, the hairs are intellect. So it says, if you look at a person's hairs, you can't tell if a person is an intellectual, or you can't tell if he's a human being, right? If you just look at the hairs. It says that's what God's word coming into even the spiritual worlds are. It's like hairs. You can't tell anything from the creative force that creates the world. You can't tell anything of what God's personality is and what God's essence is from that. That's the whole idea of the sea. Shenikra, it's called Alma Discasia, that covers over. So it covers over. Okay, not only does it cover over, but also what it's covering over is a very small amount. Malchut covers over the upper worlds, but also what it reveals is not just covered, but it's also a very small amount. Im kain im nami, or else masha dibur nikra helam, that the speech is called concealment, not just because it conceals all of the intellect above, it also minimizes the intellect itself. Lefi shamasha nimshach me'aseichel, that which is drawn down into speech, this is just the chitzonis, the external of the intellect. Of opinimus, but the inside is impossible to be revealed at all in letters and speech. The example that's always given is, let's say you have a teacher that he's a genius, right? You have Albert Einstein, and he's assigned to go and teach, advanced physics in a class, and by mistake they put him into a third grade mathematics class. So he goes into the class and he says, "Oh, there must be a mistake." He says, "Well, I'm sorry, this is what you've been assigned for the whole year. You have to teach these children, but you get paid really well. You get paid $1 million a week." So he figures, well, I got to figure out some way to teach these kids physics. What am I going to do? So he gives them a few tests to see where they are, and he realizes that their intellect is very low. So what does he do? He gives it over by speech. He explains to them. So first of all, his speech is really concealing over the intellect. Even if he would give his speech, if he would speak to a high level class of, advanced physics class, speech also conceals over the amazing genius which is in his mind. I'm just giving an example. The genius is in his mind. And here he has to do two things. First of all, he has to hide over his essential intellect and put it into speech, which that was something he would have to do even to the highest levels of. But also he has to limit down his speech. He has to explain very, very simple things. That's what God's speech does, the word Malchut of Atzilut. It does two things. First of all, that's what we explained here. It conceals God's mind, but also it limits it down so it's very, very small. So the angels, for instance, in the world of Bria, when they get a little glimpse of godliness, they go berserk. usually they don't get this glimpse of godliness. And that's why because of God's speech, God conceals himself. But when they do get, they go berserk. But what are they getting? A little tiny, like a hair from intellect. They get a little tiny revelation, and that's enough to make them go crazy. How much more so us? That's what happened in Mount Sinai. Okay, so Malchut of Atzilut conceals reality. It conceals the fact that God, what God is, and that God is, and how God creates the world. It conceals all of this, even from the angels, from the upper worlds. The whole idea, and that's that Malchut of Atzilut, which conceals all this. That's called the sea. Inyan Kriyat Yamsuf. This whole idea of the splitting of the sea, Hainu Shebe'emet Kasya, that everything that's concealed, Naset Gal, becomes revealed. The Hainu, namely, Shalo Yastir, will not conceal Dibur, the speech, Ala Otiot, on these upper letters anymore, which are in it. Dibur will not conceal, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Ala Orot, on the lights, not Otiot, I'm sorry, on the lights, the upper lights which are enclosed in it. Shehem Aseichel V'Hamidot Al Derech Moshe. So it's like, take the example. I'm only using Albert Einstein because he's the example which is given of intellect. A person who's a genius. So let's see, he goes into this high mathematics class, high professors, and he gives a class in high physics to them. Oh, they're very happy, and he says, "Well, watch this," and he goes, he looks at them, and all of a sudden they become Albert Einstein. We understand all of your ideas. So he says, let me try this in the third grade. So he goes back to his third grade class and he says, okay, kids, I want you all to look at me. Ready? Watch this. And he gives them a little like that. And all of a sudden they all become Albert Einstein. They have the same intellect as he does. Right? Is that possible to do? What would these little kids do with such knowledge? What they would do? Nevertheless, let's say he prepared them, he gave them the proper languages, and he asked them the proper question. Whatever it was, they were interested and they got this revelation. That's what happened when Yam Suf split. When Yam Suf split, was revealed the intellect and the emotions of God in the world. God was revealed to all the worlds, even in this, the upper worlds, that's the angels, that's like the experts. And even in this world, we're like the third grade class. It was revealed. That's it. The sea split, not just the physical sea split. It said all the waters in the world split. What could be bigger than that? Huh? Pretty good. Well, we're going to see Moshiach there's going to be more pure revelation of truth when the Moshiach comes in this world. Then how can that be? Well, that's the purpose of this mimer, to see. That's the 10 spheres. Yizgala will be revealed, the neshamos, to the souls in the world of Bria, also in the angels, or to the tzaddikim. Like it is revealed in Atzilut. Well, because this whole thing of Kriyat Yamsuf is joined the Habria with Atzilut, since it joins the world of Bria, which is the dimension which is below Atzilut, with Atzilut, believe parsa, without any division, without any separation. Let's go to the next page. So we do this, here we go. Therefore, Nikra Hayam, therefore the sea was split into 12. When the Jews got out of Egypt, the sea was split into 12 passages, tunnels. Kihine, behold, the Shvatim, because the tribes, the Jewish tribes, so there was 12, right? There was 12 sons of Yisrael. That's called Bnei Yisrael. The sons of, to this day, the Jewish people are called Bnei Yisrael. That's the 12 tribes. Hein Bebria, they are especially revealed in the world of Bria. The world of Bria, that's the world of the souls. That's the number 12. Sham, there is the number 12 is a special number. It's what's called the 12 Gavuli Alaksan, the 12 boundaries on the slants. Or anyway, it's a level that's revealed in the world of Bria. It's a spiritual level. But Cain, also the Malachim, all the angels of Bria, they are 12. It says they're 12. What 12? The 12 oxes and the sea on them from above. When King Solomon made the first temple, so he built it in the form of all the upper worlds. So there was a laver before the Kohanim went in to serve in the room which is called the Holy. And so there was between the outer altar and the entrance to the world, which is called the Holy, the Heichal. Before that, and the place where it was called the Holy, that's where the candelabra was. And before that, there was a laver that they would wash their hands and feet. They would put the right hand on the right foot and wash them together, and the left hand wash. Anyway, there was a big laver. So there's a big laver. It was like a huge, big bird bath sort of a thing, bird bath, and it stood. It had legs. There were 12 legs, and each leg was in the form of an ox. So there was 3 oxes on the right, 3 on the left, 3 on the top, 3 on the north, and 3 on the south. East, west, north, south. 3. That makes 12 altogether. so these 12 oxes, that represents the world of Bria. There's Atzilut, Bria, Yetzira, and Asiya. We're in the world of Asiya. And Atzilut is pure godliness. And below that is the world of Bria. Bria means creation. That's the beginning of, so to speak, creation, spiritual creation. That's represented by these 12 oxes. And on top of them, this big, huge laver, that represents the world of Atzilut. Good. So it says, even though that it's usually 4 camps of the Shekhinah, Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Ariel. And so, but each one of these 4 camps of angels, which that's the world of Bria, is divided also into 3, subdivided into 3. So that makes 12. Like it says in Mishom Yepared, like it says in the beginning when God created the world, that there was the garden that came from Eden, and from there it separated, and there it's separated, and it came to 4 tributaries. That's the 4 different. This is the spiritual worlds that God made. And there was Eden, and from that came out the river, and it watered the garden. And the Garden of Eden, that ends up to be this physical world. And the 4 rivers that came out of it, that's the 4 camps of angels. Nevertheless, a lot of times it says no, that there were when God created the world, so there was there was the Eden, and a river that came out from Eden, and then the garden that the river watered. So the garden a lot of times is the world of Yetzira, which that was revealed in this world, and the river that came out of it, that's the world of Bria, and Eden, that's Atzilut. And there's different ways of explaining it. But nevertheless, the river that came out, it was divided into 4 tributaries, and each one of them is subdivided into 3. And that's the 12 tribes, that these are the 4 camps of the Jews. When they traveled in the desert, they traveled in 4 general camps with 3 tribes in each camp, called Degel. In each one, there was 3 tribes, 3 of the Jewish tribes. This is like in a person's hand. Your hand has 3 prakim, right? The hand has 3 prakim, and also in the foot. Oh, the foot also has 3. What are the 3? I guess the wrist and the hand and the fingers. I guess that's the 3. But any case, behold, even though that the tribes themselves, they are in Bria. It says they are in Bria. Nevertheless, their source comes from what's called the 12 Gavule Alaksan. That's what I told you about before. The 12 edges, which are from the world of Zer Anpin, of the emotions of Atzilut. There's a little bit Kabbalistic over here. Of Atzilut. So let's suffice it to say like this. Pure godliness, not God himself. Pure godliness is the world of Atzilut. Atzilut. That's God's personality. Pure godliness. God's speech that he creates the worlds, even the spiritual worlds, that's called Malchut. That's the lowest of the 10 spherot. That conceals. When God starts creating the worlds, the highest world he created is the world of Bria. That's already divided into 12. It says the source of this 12 comes also what's called from the emotions of Atzilut, which are above. Emotions. And these emotions are also sometimes referred to the 12 Gevule Alachsan. I read one place that what is the 12 Gevule Alachsan? Maybe I can show you over here. You can see this. See here we have here's a box, right? You have a box. So the box has 6 sides to it. That corresponds to the 6 emotions: top and bottom, and right, left, front, back. And there are 12 lines that join them. See, we have here on the top, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. On the bottom, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. That's already 8. And then we have the sides, 1, 2, 3, 4. And those are called the 12 boundaries that join them. This corresponds to aspects which join and intertwine the emotions of God as they are in Atzilut. We said that God has a personality, right? Okay, now don't think even for 1 second that I really, truly understand what I'm talking about, because we're talking about God over here, right? God, and God is incomprehensible. But nevertheless, God gave certain people like Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and the Arizal the ability to comprehend these aspects of God, to comprehend God's aspect of God. They could explain everything. So that's what we're talking about. What's the purpose of the whole business? The purpose of the whole business is to understand that we are only the tip of the iceberg of an inverted tip of reality. And above us is all these spiritual worlds and amazing, and that's the world of Yetzirah and Bria, incredibly real, more real than we are. And the whole entire business is just a creation. And to God, it's just the same thing. To create the biggest angel is to create the littlest piece of sand or whatever. Same exact thing. And from the essence of God, which is above the whole business, that's what took the Jews out of Egypt, and that's what's going to reveal the Mashiach, and that's the whole idea of the Torah, that will reveal the true. It's just like we don't see the real meaning of this world, so we don't see the real meaning of the Torah, but we'll get into that in a moment. Okay, therefore, the splitting of Yam Suf, Kriyas Yam Suf, which was joining the upper worlds and the elevation of the world of Bria into Atzilut, this is joining the 12 tribes of Bria, the 12 tribes as they are in their source spiritually, into the 12 Gevulei Alachsan, into these 12 aspects of the emotions of God in Atzilut, Zeran of Atzilut. Therefore, it's called Hayam. Therefore, the sea was split into 12. 12, that each tribe went over. The tribes are represented by the world of Bria, and that elevated itself up into the higher worlds. So to speak, the splitting of the sea, this was like Einstein revealing his essence to the big professors. And what's revealed down here in the world, that's going to be what Mashiach does. That's going to be the number 7, and it's going to be a higher level also, and is what's revealed. Okay, but so up to now we've explained that the whole thing of splitting of the sea was a revelation of God. It was a revelation of the truth in this world, as we'll talk about more, God willing, tomorrow. And now let's continue the Damar Malchut. What do we have? A question over here? Question? Hi. What's this? What's talking about over here? 1 minute. I'll turn this off. We'll have to look at this over here. This is not clear to me what's being said. Okay, let's stop the chat.